All right, hello and welcome. I'm Jason Gumper from MSDynamicsWorld.com, and thanks for joining us for today's Dynamics AX educational event presented by IBIS. Today we are joined by Philip Karpovich, an AX consultant at IBIS. It's Philip's first event with us, and I'm really glad to be able to welcome him today. To get this event started, please know that we do invite you in the audience to add your feedback and ask questions. During the presentation, you can use the Q&A panel that you should see to the right of the presentation window to ask your questions anytime. I know Phil will make time at the end to take questions. And we also want to start today's session just with a poll, which I'm going to post now. It's just a chance to, I'm going to open that here. You should see it to the right of the slides. And it's just a chance for Philip to get a better understanding of your own experiences and your own, both with Dynamics AX and with BI tools and technology. So we're just going to leave that up for a minute or so here as we get started. I also want to just remind folks that during the demo that Philip will be giving as part of the presentation, if you ever want to zoom in or see things more clearly, you can always use the little plus and minus buttons that you should see to the upper right of the main presentation window. Those will just help you zoom in depending on the size of your screen to see things in detail. So we should have a great event getting started here, and without further delay, let me hand things off to Philip. Philip, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Jason, for the introduction, and thank you, MSDynamicsWorld.com, for letting me present this today. I'm really excited for this, and really excited to show you all some very cool features you can use with Power BI to get your AX data out of AX and into the hands of your end users. As Jason says, I've been with IBIS for 2 years now. Went to consult with them right after school, actually, and I've been doing work as a technical consultant with a focus on business intelligence. Before diving too much into BI, though, I'd just like to provide a little background with the host of this AX educational series and the company I work for. IBIS is a MS Dynamics Gold partner, and we're focused on the Dynamics AX and CRM software packages, and we've been in this business for 26 years. Our strength also is in the supply chain vertical, where we pride ourselves on our industry knowledge and our customer focus. So for today, I have 2 primary objectives I'd like to go over with y'all. The first is to briefly review business intelligence concepts and terminology, things like cube, measures, dimensions, what actually BI is, stuff like that to get everyone on the same page of what I'm talking about, and then show you how you can use tools such as Microsoft Power BI to truly unlock and make decisions based on your AX data, which is currently being stored off in some database somewhere that you don't really have creative access to. Before getting into the actual terminology for the cubes, I'd just like to describe what I believe BI is, or business intelligence, and that is any insight you have into business data that helps you drive and develop your business. So seeing snapshots of your sales data or seeing GL or AP data real-time or updated daily in a easy-to-digest format is BI to me, and this Power BI suite will really help you all get to that point. So some terminology I'd like to use and introduce you to is SQL Server Analysis Services, or SSAS, and cubes. SQL Server Analysis Services is going to be a SQL Server product that is a database for our cube databases. And what a cube database is a collection of master and fact tables, or dimensions and measure tables, which I'll describe more in a minute, that process your data for you and return it into a very easy to digest and easy to view way. So as many of you might know, the AX transaction database, or the OLTP database, is a very normalized or very spread out and hard to query database that makes building reports or building applications off of it quite difficult. What an OLTP or OLAP or a cube database does is allows you to take all that data, take it out of AX, is transactional database, and put it in a place that you can easily query and easily view. And the Power BI I'll be showing you today will actually be taking your SQL Server Analysis Services cube data and pull it into Power BI. So you don't have to worry about relations, you don't have to worry about complex queries. The data is all right there based on the standard AX cubes out of the box. As I mentioned, some of the terms I'll be using today, just kind of general cube terms are things like dimension, member, attribute, tuple, and measure. So a dimension is going to be your master record, or think of it as your description for the report you're trying to run. Things like a customer will be a dimension, or a vendor, a date possibly. These are going to be your almost adjectives on your report that describe the data you're getting out of it and how you slice and dice the report data you're getting back out. As part of those dimensions, we have members. These are specific records in that dimension, like a customer example. In this case, we have K. Kelly would be a customer. And then you also have attributes in those dimensions, which are a collection of your members. One of them by that is it would be customers in Georgia or new customers in 2014. So these are further ways to divide your dimensions and to pull out report data and to divide it how you want to see it. And you can also do this on the fly with the tools I'll be showing you. Another term I'll be using is tuple. That's going to be your intersection of your dimensions members and the measures itself, which we'll get into in a second. And then actually the measures is going to be the value at the intersection, or really what you're actually reporting on. So an example of a measure would be your customer invoice amount in accounting currency possibly, or the number of items sold, or the quantity on a sales order or purchase order, things like that. And again, this will come into play when we get into the demonstration itself. Just want to bring this up so you all have an idea of what these terms might mean. And I'll kind of explain them more later too. Another term we'll be using today is OData queries. AX provides out of the box a functionality to create queries in the AX application objects tree, or the AOT, and expose those through document services as OData queries. This is another way beyond the Cube databases where we can grab data from AX in a curated and refined way and present it to end users in a much less confusing and a much more easily to manipulate and read type of way. Up until a few weeks ago, actually, Power BI did not support pulling in Cube data, or SSAS Cube data, and these OData queries were the only way to really get data out of AX into Power BI or into the Power BI suite. Microsoft changed that a few weeks ago, about a month ago now, and now you can actually get Cube data into Power BI, which, as we'll see, is a much easier and more robust reporting solution. Also, I'm not sure how many of you have heard of Power BI or used it before, but Power BI has gone through a few name changes over the past few years. It originally started out as a number of separate add-ins for Excel that had Power something in front of them. So you might have heard of Power Pivot, Power View, Power Query, and Power Maps. These were all separate downloads you could download from Microsoft and add in and extend your Excel desktop experience. Microsoft changed that about a year and a half ago to have an online Power BI suite where it rolled all of these add-ins together and then allowed you to do kind of the functionality of all of them in one place. Recently, Microsoft kind of stepped back from that and they took their Power BI suite to a desktop client, which is what we'll be demoing today. So you can make these changes, build these reports on your own desktop computer. You don't have to have a connection to your SharePoint site or to your Office 365 site to build these reports, but you can still deploy them up there and then disseminate them out across your organization for end users or people who want to view these reports. So I just want to bring this slide up though, because there has been some confusion I've seen between, what's Power View, what's Power Pivot, and how does that tie into Power BI? All of those things are under the Power BI umbrella right now. So I've said Power BI half a dozen times already this meeting, and I just want to say kind of what Power BI is for those who haven't recognized it yet or haven't used it yet. What Power BI does is it's a reporting tool that allows you to really pull data in from a variety of data sources, including SQL Server cubes or OData feeds or the AX database. Combine the data together, you can form relationships between separate tables, separate data sources, and then visualize that data through interactive charts, graphs. You can drill down and see data real time or daily updated through Power BI. And one of the really cool things about this program is you can pull data from pretty much any data source you have in your organization. I'll be showing you today from Excel and from SSAS cubes, but you can pull data from things as far as Hadoop databases, Access databases for sure, a variety of Oracle products, and I'm going to go through a list and show you all where you can pull data from. So what this allows everyone to do is really combine their AX data with other organizational data to get a true insight into their business reporting. So again, I said I want to go through a brief description of terms I'll be using. That wraps up that portion, and I really want to dive into the actual demo right now and show you the cool things you can do with Power BI. One thing to note with this is the Power BI client right now is a free download from Microsoft, which is included in this PowerPoint slide in one of the notes. You can go up to Microsoft's website, download this onto any local desktop machine, and as long as you have access to your data sources you're looking for on your local machine, you can start building these reports I'm showing you today, actually, if you have Microsoft AX 2012 R2 or higher. Okay, so my screen should be showing now. So this is the Power BI Designer, again, a free download from Microsoft, and you can go download this right now. So it might look a little bit like Excel, and it kind of is, but what the whole point of this is you go in, grab your data from different data sources, and then you can report on them very easily. So it's as simple as me opening it up, going to the Get Data button. And as I said, this is a list of all of the possible types of data sources you can use in Power BI currently. As I said, you have the basics like Excel, CSV files, XML, sure. But you also get down into Oracle databases, IBM DB2 databases. You can get to, as I said, Azure blob storage, OData feeds, everything down to Facebook's, SAP Business Objects. So a lot of different sources you can pull data from and mash them together to get insightful reports. For this example, though, I'm going to be pulling from the SQL Server Analysis Services database. Just connect to that. Here you would enter in your server address, just like you would in Excel or any other program. I'm on a local machine, so I'm just typing the period, but you can type the full IP address as well here. This should load up, and it'll give me a list of all of my Cube databases on this server. So currently I have a number of Cube databases, but I'll be focusing on this Dynamics AX Initial one. As a note, this database is the exact same. It's the out-of-the-box Dynamics AX databases that come in AX 2012 R2 and above. So if you have that software installed on your machine and you have these cubes deployed, everything I'm showing you here can be done today even. So I'm going to the Dynamics AX Initial database, and I'm going to just, for this first example, pull from the Sales Cube. Actually, let's do the Purchase Cube. And what you'll see here is the actual cube itself and a number of nodes to select from, which will be either measures or dimensions, as we said. So again, measures are going to be what you're reporting on. So for this example, I'm going to go to the vendor invoice, and it's called a measure group, actually. It's a collection of related measures. Vendor invoice measure group, and just the vendor invoice amount accounting currency. This is pretty much going to be your currency or your amount on the lines, and I'm actually going to go to the vendor invoice lines instead. It's just a little bit easier, and you can drill down further and get more insightful data at a line level than at a header level. So I'm going to go to the vendor invoice line amount. Let's do returns included, so we have, actually not included. You just click the checkbox, and as you'll see, it will start building your data over here. What it's doing is sending on, in this example, sending on MDX query to your Cube database and returning the value of whatever you have checked. So because I have just the one measure check now, it will return all the numbers. I'll also do the purchase quantity inventory unit, just so we can compare things on items as well. And then I'll start adding dimensions and attributes to this and really kind of build out the data source I'm pulling in for this report. So to start with, I'm going to go to the vendor dimension, and these are all going to be dimensions. We can see this little graph with a cube on it that indicates dimension. We can go down to vendor, and let's grab the vendor name. And you see it's starting to break out our data for us. So we have all the vendor names, we have quantity and the actual currency amount. I'm also going to do city and then country region. And that's all keeping the vendor dimension. But I want to kind of build out this report to show more, say, item information, so we know what items are being sold to what vendors potentially. We can go to the released products dimension, grab this. I'm just going to do the released products product name. And then finally, I'm going to add the date dimension and the company, so we can break this down by year, by month, by date, and then by the company you're in. I know AX has tons of legal entities. Most of your AX setups probably have upwards of 2, 3, maybe even more legal entities. And reporting on those is a very important feature of AX, of course. And through these cubes, you can very easily report or view just single legal entity data. So again, going up to the company dimension, and grab company name. And then finally the date dimension, be date.date. And I'm going to grab the year and the month of year. One thing to note here with AX cubes, which you might have seen before if you use these in Excel with pivot tables, is that the actual month value here will return like calendar or return January 1st, 2011 or something like that. So I prefer using the month of year, which will just say it's either 1, 2, 3, 4, and you know they refer to your fiscal year months. What I mean by that, which is something to take note of, is that if your fiscal year starts January, month 1 will be January. If your fiscal year starts September, though, then month 1 will be September. Again, this is based off your fiscal year. But I think that's everything we need for this example. So just going to go to load, and it will now dump all this data into Power BI for me to report on. Just like that, as I said, these are cubes that are already there. They're out of the box. And with a few clicks, you can dump all this data right into Power BI and build very cool visualizations off of it once this loads. And it should take about 15, 30 seconds. Okay, so it's taking a bit longer than I expected. So a few things while this is still loading, I just wanted to go over. Security on the cubes is going to be based on the security you have set up in your SQL Server Analysis Services database itself. For those who haven't worked with this before and they want to work with AX security, the SQL Server Analysis Services database has its own unique security settings on it. It's there that you go and determine who can view what data, and the AX security settings do not transfer over. So for this example, if you're going to have the cube views be available to your users and have them be able to create and modify their own Power BI reports, you'd have to make sure the security is set inside of the SSAS cube as well. One thing I'll show you after this, again, it's taking a while longer than I thought, but one thing I'll show you after this too is the OData reports, which again are based off of queries in the AX AOT themselves, so they live inside of AX. The security on those will be based on what you have in AX. So just a little side I wanted to bring up with security. So with SSAS cubes, it'll be based on SQL Server security, and with the OData feeds, it'll be based off of whatever security you have in AX itself. So that should have finished up here. And there we go. We see all the fields I added in here over this field list. We can also go and view the results of the query itself. So we can see everything that got returned here. This is our backing data for our reports. And we can filter these. We can drill down into this to see kind of what we're looking at or see background data or backing data. Also, one thing to note with this screen is you can go and add new columns here. So say you wanted to maybe merge or concatenate two columns together, or you wanted to have some kind of maybe a profit margin you want to subtract or divide or come up with some number. You can add new columns here through this add column, custom column. And Power BI uses a language called M. It's actually unique for Power BI. It's very similar to the Excel language pretty much that you use to calculate cells in Excel with some slight differences. So if you try to get into this, there is very good documentation for the M language on the Microsoft Dynamics, or I'm sorry, the Microsoft MSDN website. Don't really get into that, but that is an example of you can combine, you can append or merge, or if you want to chop apart or delimitate columns, you can through that way. But so if we go back to the report, we see kind of a blank canvas here with a list of all the fields we pulled in. And from here, it really just a matter of dragging and dropping the fields you want to see and then building a report around them. So let's grab the purchase quantity for this. Just drag and drop right over. And then we're going to do I want to do the vendor invoice line amount as well. So as you can see, I'm very user-friendly, just grabbing what I want, dragging it right over to our canvas. We can move these around very easily, and we can start to divide or slice these up however we want. There's no native filtering on this actual graph right here, but what we do instead is we build these things called slicers, which I'll show you in a second, that allow us to dynamically really filter on any graph on that one sheet. So what I'm going to start with is go to the company name. Just, again, drag it right down here. Go to this little visualize dropdown and go to slicer. And we now have a filter of all of our company names that we have. So we can start clicking on single ones of these, or single values, or we can click on multiple values, and as I said, our graphs will change as we change what our filter is. Again, not too impressive right now. It's pretty basic. We don't really know what's going on here. We just see we have 10 million units sold and over $2 billion sold. But that's not too important. We can get into date dimensions, though, and start seeing when these were sold, or who these were sold to, or even when they were sold, and where we really start to see the power of Power BI. So to start with, I'm just going to drag down this date and turn this into a slicer as well. Shrink it slightly, and then drag down month as well. And again, make it a slicer. So as we see, we have all of our calendar years as well as all of our months here. One thing to note is that these slicers will react to each other. So if we go and look for 2015, if we don't have data for one of these companies in 2015, it will start to change, and you won't be able to see values in other slicers where there's no data there based on previous slicer or previous filter selections. But still, they're not too powerful. But what we can do now is grab the, so I'm going to grab the released product name onto the quantity axis, and then the vendor name onto this graph. And as you see, we now have a graph of the quantity of items sold and the amount sold based on the items for the quantity and the vendor for the, I was saying sold, I meant to say purchased. My apologies for that. For the calendar year 2015. And we can really start dribbling down into these slicers and start seeing kind of where these items were sold, what company they're for. If there's changes month to month, we can see just month one. And so we see these graphs change. We know we have this much amount for this much quantity purchased for this vendor or for this item. And we can really start drilling down and seeing our different data for different months. Also, we can change these graphs pretty easily. So say you don't want to see a bar chart, you want to see a pie chart. It's as easy as just clicking on these visualize buttons up here, and it promptly changes your data you're seeing very easily. The other cool thing we can do with this is we can actually have location-based data. AX has, again, cities or country regions tagged into it, and Power BI knows where those are actually on a map. So we can go to create a new page or new report. I'm going to grab the line amount again so we see the amount purchased and change it to a map. Again, from visualize, go down to map, let's grab this. And then you can start adding in like country region. And you'll now see, based on the country you have tied to this purchase order, or this purchase transaction or vendor invoice, you will see circles corresponding to how large that is even. So you can quickly compare across regions how much you're selling to this region, how much you're selling to this country, how much you're selling to another country. And that goes down to the city level, it can go down to the state level, and you can really kind of see some pretty cool graphical and map-based indications of what you're doing and how you're selling. And again, this can also be tied to slicers. Just pull in the year again, go down to slicer, and we can start changing the dates, and we'll change the amounts we have, and we'll see the size actually change potentially on this report. Also, if you hover over these little bubbles, you'll actually see the amount that was in that country. So you can get a kind of an idea of how large or how small a country's or region's purchases were. And you can also then click and see really what's going on there. Again, so this is kind of the power of Power BI, where you can build these dashboards, build these reports, and have your users really see the data they want to see out of them very easily. Don't have to worry about going through an SSRS report or SQL Server Reporting Service report, which is very static. Don't have to worry about them querying your actual AX database. You just have everything that you want to provide them through the cubes, through OData, through something else, right here for them to view and see. So this example was all based on just one cube. And so part of the power of Power BI is really being able to combine multiple data sources into one place. So for that, I'm going to go back to the query, and actually I'm going to add more data. And for this, I'm just create a simple Excel sheet where I tied in customer groups to just a salesperson name, really. So it's just an example of how to tie data from an Excel file, from anything else, back into Cube data, back into any other data you have to report on together. So I went to, sorry, that was a bit fast. I went to the Get Data again, and then just chose Excel and Connect. This is a file I built, Power BI demo, grab that. It will then give me an option of which workbook I want to open up. So I'm just going to grab, should be the only worksheet there, grab this one. And so we just have a column for, this is going to be customer group, and then it's a name of salesperson, sales lead. Again, really whatever data you want to have in Excel, you can pull into a cube or pull into a report in Power BI in the same way. So we just go to load, and we'll then add that to our query, or into our query view. So we see we have purchase cube already, and then also cust group sales ID. Grab this. I'm just going to change these column names just to make it easier to read. So and let's just do sales lead. And then I want to tie this back to data into the actual sales cube itself. So same thing, get data, going back to the default AX cubes, go back to SQL Server Analysis Service databases, connect the local one. And then let's go to AX initial. I want to go to sales cube. And say I'm just going to build this data source as I want from the data that's already in the sales cube. One thing to note with cube data and kind of the timing of it is that the cubes need to process their data from AX on a schedule, and that's really depending on how your cubes are set up in your company. They can be processed once a night is what we recommend, or every few hours, kind of whatever works for the hardware you have. And Power BI will pull the most up-to-date cube data that's on your SSAS database. So if your cubes process every night, Power BI will have the data from the last night's processing at all times. There's no real updates needed here. You can refresh your query, of course, but this should be live for the most part. Just remember that your cubes don't always process up to the minute. So you're usually on a 1 day or so lag between what's in your system and what's in the cubes. So for this example, I'm just going to grab the sales order line. Let's grab the, customer invoice lines actually. Then customer invoice line amount accounting currency. And this is our measure we're using, what we're reporting on. Then I'm going to just grab the, this one I just want to grab customer. I'm going to grab customer group because that's what I'll be joining these two data sources on, as we'll see. Then I'm going to grab customer name just for this example. And that's all we're going to really need. So I'm going to load that up. Just like before, we'll load this query into our Power BI. And what we're going to do is form a relationship between the Excel file I pulled in and this query I'm pulling in right now. One thing to note with Power BI, though, that's very important is the relationships between data sources are only one column to one column. You cannot combine, say, 2 or 3 columns together to have a unique combination of values. You can only combine a single column to a single column. That causes some problems with AX data, especially when you're pulling from OData sources or directly from the AX database, because AX has a data area ID field which marks which company you're in or which legal entity you're in. And I've seen some problems before arise where you have the same customer number or the same vendor number or the same item number in different companies, and you can't join those because there's no one-to-one relationship or one-to-many relationship. You have a many-to-many relationship. And I'll kind of show you what I mean in a second with that. So with these two data sources, I'm just going to go to the, once it loads up, I'm going to go to this Relationship Manage button. And pretty intuitive. And just a little bit of background, if you haven't worked with relationships between databases before or worked with relationships between tables, what I mean by one-to-one, one-to-many, or many-to-many is just the number of unique values you have maybe in one table, the number of values you have in one table, and how they correspond to another table. So if you have a one-to-many, you have one table that has maybe like a primary key or unique value that corresponds to a lot of other values. So in this example, we have a single customer group number on the Excel table. Let me show you that, which corresponds to a number of customer group values on the sales cube table. And that is allowed. So we can select, again, this column right here, go to the sales cube, and we just grab customer group. So all I'm doing is selecting this column, right or left clicking it, highlights it, and selecting customer group. And that will form the relationship. The problem that happens with this, though, is if we have, say, 2 10s here in this table and more than one 10 here or 2 or more 10s here, Power BI will not be able to create that relationship. It won't be able to join those tables together because it has no idea which 10 really goes to which value, which is why it's important to have at least one table you're relating have unique values and make sure that's what's joining up with another. So again, so I just collect cus group. This is the sales lead. I pulled in from Excel. Sales cube I pulled in from the SSAS cubes. Go to click OK. It will pop up in a second. The relationship's defined. It knows these two columns are related together. I can then close this. I'm going to create a new report, actually. And as you see, they're broken down in separate groupings here. So I have the sales cube here and the customer group sales lead here. What I'm going to do is just pull in this customer line amount, which will have all of our, should have everything here. That's, sorry, not what I was expecting. Hold on, let me rebuild this query and see what's going on. So we go to sales cube. Oh, my mistake. I pulled in commission line amount by accident. I meant to pull in customer invoice line amount. User error here. So in order to fix this, all I have to do is go into this Add Items button right here. And it will allow me to go back into the sales cube, grab more measures, more dimensions on the fly. You don't have to rebuild the whole query. You don't have to rebuild anything. Just go here, go to customer invoice line amount, accounting currency, and click OK. And that should populate right here. This is what I was looking for. All of this customer invoice line, AR, invoice amount. My mistake. So going back to this report, I do not want commission line amount. And this might take a minute again. There we go. So I'm going to drag this out of here, don't want it, and then take the customer line amount here. Grab that. We see we have $4 billion in AR invoices. And just for this example, I'm going to pull the sales lead again. This is from the Excel sheet I brought in. Pull that in. Actually, sorry, I wanted to pull that in as a access to the customer invoice line amount. And that is not correct either. What's going on here? Oh, I'm sorry, that's my mistake. Again. So the relationships with peers are defined on the actual report itself. So while I define that relationship on this page, I'm sorry, on the page itself, it's not on this one. My mistake again. So I'm just going to go back, recreate that relationship. New. Grab customer group sales lead. Grab sales cube. Relate this column to this column. Go to OK. Should be there. Close. And there we go. As we can see, so in this report, we were now able to grab data from an Excel sheet and combine it together with the SSAS cube to dive deeper into our business analysis. This was just an example to show you a simple Excel table, but you can pull in, again, data from Excel, from an Access database you might have using somewhere. If you're using an Oracle database or an IBM database, the same thing. All you need to have is one column that matches up with a one-to-many relationship between your AX data or your SSAS cubes and your whatever data you're pulling into. So the last thing I would like to show is OData real fast. As I said, I'd much rather prefer using the SSAS cubes now that you can actually use them in Power BI, just because they're already there. They're intuitive, and many companies I've seen have already have experience using them with pivot tables inside of Excel. But if you want to have a little more control, you want to kind of refine your queries to very limited result sets, you can go and add a new OData source, which is simply done by going and either creating or using a pre-existing AX AOT query. For those you might not know, in the AX application object tree, you can create query objects, which are pretty much going to be user-defined and queries that you can specify what tables to pull from, what specific fields to pull from, and if you have any restrictions, any like having clauses or where clauses, like so where legal entity equals your one legal entity, you can define those in those queries, and then go to the AX organizational administration page under Setup, Document Management, Document Data Sources. You can go and create a new query reference by just going on to New, selecting whatever module you want. This is just kind of a tag, doesn't really matter. The data source type, go down to query reference, and then you can pull whatever query you want that's in the AOT and expose it as an OData source, which can be picked up by Power BI or by other BI applications. So in this example, I already have two built. Right here you can see PKBI Cust Invoice Trans 2 and PKBI Cust version 6. These are already activated, and the way you check to see that they are activated and you can use them is by going to this URL address. Well, not this specific one, but what's going to happen is every AX installation, every instance of it, so if you have different, if you have like dev or build on the same server, each instance will have its own URL that's unique to it, which will show all the OData services that are available from that instance. And just to break it down, of course, it's the IP address of the AOS server right here, followed by the port number, which is the AOS you're actually looking to hit. Again, if you have multiple environments on one box, this is how you can tell which one to go to. And this Dynamics AX Services OData service will be the same for all URLs. And again, I know this is the same for Dynamics AX 2012 R2 and R3. I'm not sure about before that, though. But what this is for is just so to make sure that you can see your queries are here, you can verify they're running, and you can see if you're getting problems. Once you know that, you can go actually back into Power BI and going to get data sources, grabbing a new source, it's OData feed, and then you need that URL we just talked about in order to access your data feed. So I need to just copy and paste this here. Okay. Should load in a second. And if these are a list of all the queries we have exposed as OData, we can grab whichever ones we want, the two I created, and it will pull the data in here, and you can then use these OData queries to build the reports in the exact same way that we showed you with the SSAS data sources. A few things to note with these, again, is getting these OData queries to merge together is slightly problematic due to that limitation on the relationships we can build. So if you're going to build these, I'd recommend making sure that your queries you're building these off of have the data area ID filtered by the one company you want to be in. I've seen that help a lot. And also just make sure you're not repeating data. So maybe you have the same customer account number and the same legal entity. That could cause some problems joining this up to other data sources. And that's what I wanted to hit for the demos. Going back to the, make sure I can get back to this. Going back to PowerPoint, sorry. And that's all I wanted to show you. I'd like to now open it up to any questions and hand it back over to Jason to kind of run the Q&A.
All right, thanks, Philip. Great stuff there, and we do have a few questions that have come in. I do want to remind folks you can use the Q&A box on the right to ask your questions, and please do get them in now. So going back a little ways in the presentation, someone asked about M and asked, is it a replacement for SSAX MDX?
So Keith, no it is not. M is a language only for Power BI. That's really the only place it is right now. And MDX is still how we're going to be querying the SSAS database. What's actually happening too when we do go out and add the data source, and what you saw there from SSAS, we're actually writing an MDX script in the background and it's returning the results from that. So to answer your question, no, M is not a replacement for MDX.
So can we add reports to PowerPoint and play with the data in PowerPoint after using Power BI?
I actually have not tried that with the new MX or MS Power BI client that came out a few months ago. I know you could do it with previous Power View versions pretty easily, actually, and that's something I can definitely look into. I'm just not sure with this new version if it's a feature currently or not. I'm confident it will be in the near future if it's not already, though.
All right, and a question on the OData. Is OData on by default, the OData service?
If you have the queries exposed, it is. So OData service is there all the time. It really just depends on which queries or which services you have exposed as OData to see if they're there. You can very possibly not have anything, no queries at all, and you'll have nothing to show.
And the question was, another related question, how do you create an OData query?
Okay. So an OData query is created the exact same way as a normal query in the AOT. As we have some time, I can quickly get into that. If you'd like, I can re-show my screen, and we can kind of dive into that. So I'm going to share my screen one more time. And again, this is all done in the AX AOT. So if you have developers or you have a partner who's familiar with creating queries or doing any modifications, it'll be very, very natural for them to do this. So just going to the AOT, again, hitting Control-D in AX, going down to this Queries button. And really all you do is you create a new query, unless you actually use an example that I have already. You go to create a new query, and you can then drag and drop, well, you have data sources here. You drag and drop your tables you want here. You drag and drop the tables you want to view off of, and then drag the field you want to see in this query into this field node here. You can also create relationships between linked tables. So over here I have the cust table 1 and then dir party table. I can go here to relationships and see how I'm joining these two tables together in this query. What this allows us to do is expose data sets to our users that have these joins already built in, so we don't have to worry about them linking tables together or doing their own kind of relationship building is already there in these queries. And as I said, it's a very kind of straightforward, just kind of drag and drop process that is quite simple to do.
All right, great. Another question here that I think is probably one that's on a few people's mind as sort of a next step. How do you publish the Power BI reports, and how do users get the reports? And is SharePoint required?
So Office 365 with Power BI is required. You can publish it up to a Office 365 site. And what happened is they recently had, again, all of this was done on the Office 365 online Power BI application up until a few months ago. And Microsoft's pulling that back down to the desktop experience, but you would still need that Office 365 subscription with Power BI to publish them up there. Once they're on the 365 site, they can be pushed to SharePoint, and it can be seen in the SharePoint document libraries where users can interact with them. But at the same time, the users can get to them from the Office 365 site as well.
And what about using the Power BI reports in AX role centers?
So currently that is not possible. What can be done is there is the Power View application for SharePoint specifically, which is still the preferred method of using reports like this in the role centers. My understanding is Microsoft is working to get this functionality for Power BI to be able to put in the role centers, though, and from there you will be able to. I'm not sure how long that is, though, or how long out that is.
Yeah, I believe that AX7, I don't have it off the top of my head either, but AX7 will have some enhancements for that too as well.
I believe so.
All right. So a couple other questions have come in here. Drilling down into data from a chart, can you touch on that at all, or what's required for that?
Really, the best way to drill down on data is to look at the query that underlies it and filter from there. There's not quite a good way to just kind of double-click and see everything, like there is in pivot tables yet. But you can go to the data backing it up and see, based on filters there, kind of what you want to see. It's not the most dynamic feature yet, but I also know Microsoft's working on that as well.
All right. And the same person asks, why do we need to create new relationships on each page? We know that the data source is fixed.
I actually think that was a user error on my part. It looks like it didn't save the data source at all. I'm not sure what happened there. I don't believe you need to, though. And actually, I'll share my screen one more time just to verify that. Don't want to give out bad information, of course. So my screen should be coming up now. So I created this relationship on this page, obviously, and it's there. Yeah. So as I said, it looks like I just didn't save it before, or didn't save for some reason. Again, not sure quite what happened there, but I was incorrect, and you only have to create the relationships at one time.
All right. And let's see here. Can you change how the dollar amount is displayed on the radial gauge from billions to millions?
Unfortunately, no. Just the amounts in general they're showing up here, or just the dollar amounts or the numeric amounts, are all kind of being dynamically generated by Power BI at this time. From what I can tell, there's no real good way to format those numbers, even get them in with a dollar sign in front of them, or to change kind of what you're seeing. It gives you what it thinks is best for the graph being shown.
All right, here's an interesting question on deployment. How do you deploy this in a cloud environment with users accessing reports from outside your network? Can you create a cloud-based data store that is refreshed from data within the organization?
I'm actually not sure on that question. I do not have any experience using this in a cloud-based environment. My understanding is you can, as long as your users have access to some data store, whether that be a data warehouse you build or a way to kind of tunnel in or VPN into your connection for the cloud, they can. I have not worked with that, though.
All right, why don't I make a last call for questions here. Just trying to look through the question queue, see if we missed anything. I do want to remind folks that we do have a quick survey that will pop up as we wrap up today. We really appreciate your feedback. It takes 15 to 20 seconds, if that, to just tell us and tell the speaker how we did today, and it really helps us going forward to shape future sessions and future presentations. I believe that is all our questions. So with that, we will start wrapping up. Well, it looks like we do have one more, just in time. What will happen when we change the query from an OData feed after we use it in our Power BI report? Does it automatically refresh our data?
So what I've been finding is you need to just redeploy the OData query. So as I showed in the Microsoft Dynamics Data Management or Document Management section, you just reactivate it. It will update your data, and everything should come through just fine.
Could that break a report if it really changes?
It could potentially. It could, absolutely. If you remove some data for some reason. If you take things out, it could break a report that needs that information, of course. I can't see it breaking anything if you just add new values to it, though, no. Or new columns, new attributes or dimensions.
Mm-hmm. And Jill asks, where do most users view their dashboards, in AX or in SharePoint?
Through the Power BI, or I'm sorry, through the Office 365 site or through SharePoint.
All right. Thanks for getting those questions in, folks. And with that, we are going to conclude today's event. Philip, thanks so much for joining us. Really interesting stuff.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and thanks to everyone else on the line. Have a great day, and this concludes the session.